View is live. Hate in America. Was the deadly San Diego synagogue shooting fueled by a disturbing rise in white nationalist racism? And how can we fight back? Plus, former Republican Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, reveals why he says Robert Mueller may have handed President Trump another 4 years. And View Your Deals, your one-stop shopping for Mother's Day. Let's go! Let's light up Hot Topics with Whoopi, Abby Huntsman, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Meghan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
Yet again, it's happened in this country, something horrible. Saturday, a white nationalist allegedly opened fire in a San Diego synagogue, killing one woman, injuring 3 others. 19-year-old suspected shooter, also being investigated for a recent mosque fire, wrote an online manifesto saying he was inspired by recent acts of terror from other white nationalists. Now, these incidents are on the rise. Why and what? What do we do about this? What do we do about this?
Well, the first thing is maybe name it as terrorism.
Yeah.
That I don't think they name it quite terrorism unless it's somebody from out of the country or some,
domestic terror.
Yeah. But I mean, the incidents are all white nationalists. But, there's this one, and then Christchurch and Tree of Life Synagogue, Mother Emanuel AME Church in South Carolina, that terrible one.
Right.
They're all terrible. Oak Creek Sikh Temple, and it's across the board. It's Muslims and Christians.
Right. So
and Jews.
So is there as much anger about domestic terrorism as there is about exterior terrorism?
It hits the very fabric of who we are, what this country was founded on, right? I mean, terrorism is terrorism. And I think, to Joy's point, how important it is for our elected officials to come out immediately. The president did condemn this one. He called the rabbi. But we haven't always seen the reaction as immediate and seeing it as dangerous as it is. And I just want to give a shout out to the rabbi of the synagogue, because he, along with some other people, stepped up and were heroes in that moment. And he said, I turned around and I saw a group of children in the banquet hall, including my own granddaughter, and I just ran, not even knowing that my own fingers were blown off. And he took the kids together, got them outside, went into the sanctuary, got everyone out safely, and then continued to do a sermon after that, to remind them of the Holocaust and that we will not stand for this. What an incredible man he is.
Incredible man. And I think to answer your question, Whoopi, what can we do about it? I think Joy's response goes to the heart of it, because you have to identify what the problem is and say it out loud to come up with a solution. And so we know that the common thread is white supremacy and white nationalism, and the other common thread is using these AR-15s or AR-type weapons. And so when you have the President of the United States being asked in March if white nationalism, this rise that we're seeing, is a huge threat, and he comes out and says something like, I don't really. I think it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems, I guess. When you have that minimization of what is clearly a significant rise in hate crimes at the hands of that type of person, you've got to address that. And you also have to address the fact that what is also in common are these AR-15 assault rifle style weapons.
Right, but
you've got to do both.
But I think it's at this point that's two different conversations. One is a conversation about guns, and one is a conversation about terrorism. And I don't mean to. Did you have something? Okay.
I have something to say.
Go ahead.
But go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, days like yesterday and today are, I think, hard and horrific for all Americans, and you can't help but feel scared. I actually have a friend who is a a commentator who is Jewish who travels to temple with security now, because that's the kind of era that we're living in, and it's just horrific. I will say, you are right. The Southern Poverty Law Center reports a 30% increase in U.S. hate groups over the past 4 years, 7% increase in hate groups in 2018 alone. So I do think we need to do some reflection culturally about where we're at and why these sort of hate crimes are rising. I do also want to say that Lori Gilbert Kay was killed trying to shield Rabbi Goldstein from the shooter. That's heroism in a way that, you know, we should say her name. We should honor her. We should pray for her and her family. I think we should take a moment here to do that. But I will say, past that, one of the things that I would look to is how these guys are getting radicalized, and we can look towards the internet. And by the way, he was on a fringe social network called 8chan, which is a dark corner of the internet. And we all, I think, collectively here on this show, we're all free speech advocates. We make our living off of free speech. But that doesn't mean that I think that there should be dark corners of the internet where people can be radicalized to conduct terrorists, you know, horrific terrorist tragedies. So I do think Silicon Valley has to start answering for this. And by the way, I am a free speech advocate, but that doesn't mean that I think there should be places where child pornography, people can be radicalized on the internet. So I would look at whoever is supporting 8chan at this point.
I wanted to say something about Trump, though, here. Because I wrote down maybe the line that, like last week, Biden introduced the video where he brought up Charlottesville. We all saw that. It was very, very well done. And it reminds us that we're losing the soul of America, etc. The next day, I believe, was the next day, Donald Trump defends Charlottesville once again, says that these people were historians. They were more interested in Robert E. Lee than the fact that they're saying Jews will not replace us. They were just a bunch of historians. Right. Why don't we just lock up Doris Kearns Goodwin then? Okay. Then on Saturday in the morning, this assault on the synagogue. And then Saturday afternoon, our hearts are with the victims. So he talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's provocative. He gives dog whistles constantly to these people. And then Kellyanne goes out there and defends him and says, no, no, no. And he's like, no, no, no.
Well,
take responsibility for your actions, Mr. President. You are the culprit. One
of the things that is the culprit, really, is we have, you know, there used to be we had a little group in Washington that looked specifically to homegrown terror. You know, they've disbanded this group.
At the Justice Department?
At the Justice Department, it's gone. And so now, things that they might have caught, things that they might have been watching, no one's watching them now. You know, no one's paying attention to the dark corners of the internet. And, you know, I'm with you. You know, I'm all for free speech. I'm all for you saying, I don't like what you say and blah, 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 having those conversations. But there comes a time when you have to realize that if someone is saying, go out and do this, go out and do harm to people, that's hate speech. I'm sorry, I don't care what they're saying.
And it shouldn't be protected.
And it's not, it should not be protected, and I didn't think it was, but apparently it is. And I don't know how that works.
And again, the tone comes from the top. If it's not at the Justice Department, that is because the White House doesn't want it to be at the Justice Department.
Well, this is something everybody should be really concerned about, because if no one is watching domestic terror, if no one's watching who's coming for us, and listen, white people, yellow people, orange people, green people, they're not happy with any of us. Okay, they're talking about you too. When they say they're coming, they're talking about you also. It's not them and us, it's all us. So if we don't start saying, listen, this is not acceptable, this is going to go on and on and on. We'll be right back.
Later, sexual politics. Is the media propping up male Democratic candidates and leaving the women behind? Okay, so there's a big election coming.
Isn't that exciting?
It is raining candidates here on The View.
And the candidates are lining up.
First interview he's given since he announced. Please welcome former Vice President Joe Biden.
They all voice different views.
Do you think this country is ready for a gay president?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
But they all have one thing in common. They come here to make news.
I'm going to run for president of the United States.
I love that you'll make it official right here on The View.
This is the best place to do it.
In this epic year ahead.
Anybody who wants to make it to the next level in politics has to come on this show.
Because this is the place to be heard.
And that is why it's called The View.
On ABC.
When it comes to...
Still ahead, Newt Gingrich gives his political view on why he says President Trump has the right to fight against congressional subpoenas. And it's Mother's Day on View Your Deal.
Welcome back. So, Joe Biden was here on Friday. I wasn't. I missed him. And you know, he just announced he's running for president. And he's already leading the pack on breaking fundraising records. But tracking polls show that the media's covering of male candidates like Biden, Bernie, and Beto, and Buttigieg is about twice as much as the female candidates. Ain't that something?
Yep. It's annoying.
Now, you know, in this era of enlightenment, what the hell? What the hell? What's happening?
I don't know. That was so surprising to me because in 2018 we have more women representing us in Congress than we've had in forever, I think, in a really long time. But when you look at the coverage, we only have heard a couple of names, those women, over and over and over again. Because I was looking it up myself. And, you know, you hear AOC, 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 but that's about it. So I guess our media is just not doing a very good job.
Well, how many women are running for president?
Four.
You know, I mean,
There you go.
And what's interesting, beyond just the media coverage, is where they're sitting in the polls. Because if this is the year of the women and Democrats are all about putting a woman in the White House, at the top of the ticket are all white men, older white men. So I don't know if this...
That's because they're getting more coverage.
Well,
Yeah.
it could be that, but I also think it could be that Democrats are thinking about beating Trump. And they know that more than anything else, they've got to get someone in there who can get
well,
out of
let's see
office.
who gets nominated first.
I'm just saying the way it looks now.
Well, because there's always going to be more men running because there seems to be more of them.
But this was interesting. Hillary Clinton said she did an interview in February, and I think this is such an interesting point. She said, how do you get on this kind of Goldilocks path where you're not too strong, you're not too weak, you're not too aggressive, you're not too passive? This is still a problem for women on the public stage. How do you find sort of that perfect balance where you're not, you know, criticized for acting like a jerk if you're a woman, and you don't come across as just a weakling?
You know, the one thing about Trump is that he didn't think he was going to win, and he didn't care whether he won or not. He was just interested in promoting his businesses, really, through the presidency. Right. Let's face it. And when you don't care if you're going to win, it's like, oh, devil may care. You say any stupid thing, and people say, oh, it's interesting. You know, oh, that's funny. Let's put him on again. The ratings are up. Nobody was interested in Hillary Clinton except the Russians, okay? Everybody was interested in him.
And what he had to say.
And Kamala and the rest of them need to take a page and say, look, if I don't win, I don't win. Let me just be myself and go out there and say it and be politically incorrect a little bit.
But I mean, there's a sort of cognitive dissonance to this because I don't know which comes first. You're right. Bernie, Biden, Buttigieg, they're polling in the top three in most Iowa, New Hampshire swing state polls right now. Polls can change. So I don't know if it's that journalists are following them because they're doing so well. I will say it is noteworthy. Pete Buttigieg is a minority in and of himself. He's an openly gay man. So that's historical as well. I will say that what bothers me the most of all the coverage of the candidates so far is, and I know you like him, but Beto's coverage infuriates me on an almost daily basis. No woman could ever lose running for Senate and then go on a Jack Kerouac road trip, abandoning his wife and kids, finding himself, then do an announcement on the cover of Vanity Fair. That's what he did. And then going on, he left them and he went on a road trip to find himself after he lost. No woman could do that.
Well, we could say
and then he went on, just 1 second. Then he went on the cover of Vanity Fair and he said he was born to run. I believe if Kamala Harris or Amy Klobuchar or Elizabeth Warren had done any of those similar things, they would be lambasted in the media.
Because if you have children as a woman,
you're not allowed
you can go, but nobody will understand. Nobody will say.
You're a grown-ass man finding yourself after you ran. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Oh, honey, you know.
I never get applause, so So clearly, people are agreeing with you. But I'm sorry,
men
imagine
are
Kamala
always,
doing that.
yeah, no, men are always, you know, oh, I've got to find myself. I'm going to, you know. But women, you know, you can't get up and just leave your kids.
No.
You know, people will not, they don't care if you find yourself when you have kids.
No,
They don't,
there is no
they don't
finding
care.
yourself.
You find your kids. That's what you do. We'll be right back. Yeah, you're right. So, there you have it. Was there a pop culture event that stuck with you guys like this?
A movie, you mean?
I guess, or something that...
I still can't get over Zac Efron's hair. I think he's so cute, but I don't know what that was. Not a fan. I love Zac. There actually was a moment in my life that I look back on, and it was The Sound of Music for me. I was a really strong-willed child, and my parents always saw me performing in the mirror. They're like, we've got to channel that energy, so they put me in auditions. And at 6 years old, I was Brigida, and you know what? It taught me a love for performing. It taught me responsibility, and it changed my life forever. So I love the story. I look back, and that was my moment. Yeah.
You remember Psycho? I can't take a shower to this day.
That was one.
I'll tell you one thing about this topic. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking all the movies that I watched when I was young were romantic movies, a lot of them. I here and there, some kind. I never went to violent. They never allowed that. And they all ended before people got married. So it was all, they were in love, they were kissing, they were having fun, and then they got married. They never told you what happened after they got married.
That's why they call it the end.
Oh my God. That is exactly right. And I took that quite seriously.
I loved Fame, the movie, like that. I was like 12. Oh my gosh. I mean, I dressed like that, and it helped my love of dance. I started taking dance classes almost every day because of that movie.
Did you?
I laughed in the meeting because Gabby and I can't be more opposite. Mine is Sigourney Weaver in Alien and Aliens as Ripley. I'm sorry, I stand so hard for Sigourney Weaver, and she is if you rewatch this movie, she's a badass female heroine, kicking alien butt all the way around. She's not trying to dress like a princess. She's a badass, and she saves the world in it, and it's just like I stand so hard for her.
Best.
Yeah.
All of them.
The first time I ever saw a woman kicking ass and taking leadership roles in movies, and I was like 11 when I saw it, and I was like,
well,
I want to be Sigourney Weaver.
That's one of the first films where you did see that. You know, it's kind of amazing. We'll be back.
Does the man who led the charge for President Clinton's impeachment think President Trump's headed there too? And why does he say Joe Biden could win the next election? Newt Gingrich is live on The View next.
The calls for impeachment and multiple investigations happening in D.C. right now must be giving Newt a little agita or some flashbacks to when he was Speaker of the House during the Clinton administration. Please welcome author of the new book, Collusion, Newt Gingrich.
They shouldn't you have called it No Collusion?
No, because my book is about the Russians trying to poison the U.S. Senate.
Oh.
It's not about Mueller. It's about just pure dumb luck. It came out exactly at the right moment.
Yeah. Well, Newt, it's nice to have you back on the show, as always.
Sigourney Weaver?
Sigourney Weaver. I know. I love her in that movie. It's so good.
No, I'll think of you in the future, though, carrying around. I'm going to worry about you as long as there are no aliens or something.
Well, you heard us talking earlier about the synagogue shooting in San Diego and the rise in hate crimes. I just wanted to get your take on why you think there is such a rise in hate crimes in the United States, specifically.
I think part of it, and this is a challenge to us because we believe in freedom, but I think part of it is the internet-based social media, where different people who normally would have never found each other can now communicate and reinforce their hatred and get to have a sense of legitimacy at doing evil things. And I think that whether that means we have to ultimately be prepared to have some editing and say there are certain topics or certain kinds, or if we find that you're having these kind of messages, that we need to investigate you before anything happens. I mean, the case recently in the Mall of the Americas, where this guy took this child and threw it off. He had a long list of violent acts, and clearly he's mentally ill. But the current laws don't allow you to say, he shouldn't have been on the street. And I don't know about the person who did the shooting at the synagogue, but I think there are some people who you cannot tolerate having an ability to go out and hurt other people. And it's not good enough to say, well, after you do it. But this is a real challenge for us as a free people, because we cherish freedom, but there may be a boundary where we cannot tolerate certain levels of violence.
Maybe there are caveats in the First and Second Amendments that have to be rethought. It's possible.
But you know this. This is when leadership matters. And people go back to Charlottesville as one of the ugliest days in recent history. And some people blame the president for the hate that we're seeing right now and his lack of response in that moment. He said recently that he handled it perfectly. Even Joe Biden used it in his recent announcement ad, talking about both sides and that we're in a battle for our soul. Do you think the president handled it perfectly, or is he part of the reason why there is such a division and a hate right now?
First of all, it's a good question. I watched your show on Friday. I watched the interviews with Biden. I wanted to start and say that there's this myth on the left. It's not true. If you go back and look at what Trump said clearly that he was opposed to the white supremacists, he was opposed to Klansmen, he was opposed to Nazis. I mean, he says it clearly.
It's not that clear.
It's not that clear.
Well, I think I could find video that's pretty darn clear.
Well, it's not, because I have what he said right here. And his first statement, he said that there was violence on many sides. 2 days later, after all the backlash, is the first time that he even mentioned the KKK and neo-Nazis. And then the following day, he still said, Newt, you had some very bad people in that group. You also had some very fine people on both sides.
Well, if by both sides, and look, this is an interesting topic. Are we going to say, if you are somebody who thought Robert E. Lee was a decent person, which, by the way, would be a very high percent of white Virginians. Okay?
Wasn't he a traitor to the country?
And a slaveholder?
He was a traitor? Yes. Okay. So now you're going to say, now you're going to say everybody in the South who thinks that anybody was a reasonable person is, you know what might have inappropriate.
What might have worked probably better if those good people, the good people he was, I guess, alluding to, looked over and saw some of the placards that people were carrying, the anti-Semitic words that were being said. Perhaps they might have marched in a different march.
I think they would have.
You know? And so I think, but if you see that, you leave. You don't want, if you're going to march with these folks, if you're in the picture with them, it looks like you are part of the problem. So even if you say they were good people, you have to understand that that's not what people see, because you figure if you're a good person and you're marching for the monument, you're not going to let people say, well, you know, we're not going to let Jews take over our lives and no more Jews and no more blacks and all of that stuff. So I think that that's why people have a problem with it.
I just want to make 2 points, though, if I could.
No, look,
the first point is that when you look at organized groups like Antifa, there is a fair amount of violence on the left. But
that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, let's stick with Charlottesville, because that's what we're talking about.
The second point is, you have a president whose daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren are all Jewish.
Yeah.
The idea that he's in any way anti-Semitic, I think, is irrational.
But no one said that. What we said, Speaker Gingrich, is that he said you had some very bad people in that group. You also had some very fine people on both sides. And the suggestion somehow that he did not say that is intellectually dishonest.
No, I didn't. I'm not being intellectually dishonest. I'm not being intellectually dishonest. I'm disagreeing with your interpretation. I'm saying, are you literally saying that everybody who favors having those statues is somehow a bad human being?
If you are marching with people with signs that say, down with Jews, Jews are not going to take over our lives, and you don't step away because that's not how you feel, you're going to get lumped into that group. That's what we're saying.
So can't you also, I'm wondering if you said because he has a Jewish daughter and a Jewish son-in-law and Jewish grandchildren, that he can't do both, have that and also give dog whistles to white nationalists? He can do both.
He doesn't do that.
Yeah, he does.
See, that's what.
Also, I've never heard him. But I've never heard him go out there and say, you know, my daughter's Jewish, my grandchildren are Jewish.
No,
I feel it very,
So
very
again,
strongly. I've never heard that.
But again, to my first question, though, did he
strongly
handle that perfectly then?
What?
When you go back to Charlottesville, did he handle that
He didn't handle it
Because
perfectly,
clearly
and I
there's
said at
still
the
so
time
much
he did.
confusion. People are angry still about that day and the lack of
And I
response.
said he didn't handle it perfectly at the time.
So
I'm not going to look. I'm not going to come in here or go anywhere, even to a Republican group, and get up and say I think Donald Trump does anything perfectly. Donald Trump is a very powerful personality who at times steps on his own messages and at times makes mistakes. That's the reality.
Go ahead, baby.
I think we're going to take a commercial break and then come back, and then I would love to talk to you about politics in 2020, if that's okay, Newt.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about dinosaurs. I went to the American Museum yesterday.
Oh, yeah, you do. You
I
love
did.
zoos and museums.
Okay.
I did know that.
All right. Well, we'll be back.
This week, get ready for a sizzling political view. Plus, 50 Shades of Grey author E.L. James eats up the table. And Rebel Wilson and Diane Sawyer are bringing their views this week. Tomorrow, the woman who set fantasies on fire with her 50 Shades of Grey trilogy, E.L. James, is taking you between the sheets of her new best-selling sizzler, The Mister.
We are back with Speaker Newt Gingrich. It's so nice to see you again, Newt. As you know, as you said, Joe Biden was on a show Friday. You said you think he could conceivably beat Trump. So can you tell me why?
Look, I think Joe Biden's one of the nicest people in politics. Melissa and I were with him a couple years ago in Aspen, totally bipartisan. We actually went to Mass together. And I think if the country decides that it wants Mr. Nice, then he's going to win the Democratic nomination. And I think at that point, if it's Mr. Nice versus Mr. Tough, it'll be a very interesting race. I think that the challenge he's got, and you saw it a little bit on Friday, that when you get to details, he can't necessarily follow through. So there's a question of whether, well, I mean, he is about to be 76. He has been practicing this since 1972. If he's going to get there, it ought to be pretty soon.
Well, to be fair, we were grilling him on Anita Hill and all of the allegations about
running for
inappropriate
president's
touching. Yeah, but I mean, it was us too. We didn't get to policy questions in the interview.
We had them. We just didn't get
Just
them.
didn't get
But I
to
think
Do you think he can get through a primary, though, with how left the party is?
Here's what I think. This will surprise you. I think his real challenge is Kate Smith. Kate Smith
God bless
had
America.
a statue in front of the Flyers Arena. She recorded 3,000 songs in her lifetime, including God Bless America, which was given to her to sing to commemorate in 1938. 2 songs that she sang in 1931 had racist language. One of them, by the way, had actually been sung by a black singer.
I have
That
the music
blew
of that.
up.
I have the actual sheet music of Pickin' in the Heaven.
Right, and so that
That's
blew
the
up.
name of
That
the
blew up.
song.
And within days, the statue was gone.
Yeah.
And they no longer use her voice either at the Yankees or at the Flyers singing.
So that's going to do Biden in?
Biden has a career that goes back to 1972. There were things he did in that career that are totally legitimate in the year he did them that are really going to be hard to defend. I mean, once he's up against opponents and they start picking apart his record, he's going to spend all day, every day.
Why would we have to? We're picking his record apart. Trump has a horrendous record as a human being.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have the answer to this.
That's right.
You just made my point.
I made my point.
No,
So it's
because Democrats cannibalize each other and Republicans get in line.
Yeah, I don't think you're saying that the country's doing that, but if the Democratic Party is going to suffer so much in the past, then maybe they deserve Trump.
Right, it's the way the current media.
So are you
and the
saying
current
it's the Democrats that got Kate Smith's...
No, I'm saying that the tone of our era, the tone of our time is, if we ever find anything you ever did wrong at any point in your life, we're going to punish you even if it's 40 years or 50 years.
But no one has punished the president.
You know what?
Nobody has
And that's because That's because this country is deeply divided. I said, Mr. Pleasant versus Mr. Tough.
But if your party is supposed to be the party of family values,
But
Republicans
get in line and Democrats cannibalize
Okay,
each other.
we've got to get to your book because
we
we've
do.
got a minute left on the show.
I'm not going to be able to get to dinosaurs at the
I know,
Yeah.
I know, but please tell everybody about collusion.
Okay, this is not about the Mueller report. This is about an effort by the Russians to poison the U.S. Senate. And it also has as its main character a Navy SEAL who is severely wounded and ends up with an opioid addiction and is dealing with his addiction while he's at the same time serving the country.
Is this fiction?
It's fiction, but it's we tried to make it very real, and I think you'll find I do podcasts at Nude World, and you can see there we did a podcast yesterday on Russian poisoning, which is something they seem to love.
Yeah.
And we're doing a podcast next week on the efforts to get away from opioids and go to different kind of.
Okay, so Newt, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Newt Gingrich's new book, Collusion, is out tomorrow, and members of our audience are all getting a copy. Thank you so much for coming today.
Up next, hit the motherload on View Your Deal. We partnered with vendors for at least half off gifts moms gonna love on Mother's Day.